Welcome. Hi.
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 Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Charlotte Gullick, and I'm chair of the Creative Writing Department at Austin Community College. How many ACC students are here? Awesome. How many are getting extra credit? Awesome. Glad you're here. And thank you to your professors for telling you about it. So I just want to let you know that we offer creative writing classes at Austin Community College. And they're small, and they're good, and we have people of all ages. Last semester I had a 20-year-old student and a 83-year-old student, and it was pretty awesome, same classroom. We're really grateful to Malvern Books for hosting us, allowing us to be here. Thank you to Fernando, and Celia. And if you don't know this about Malvern Books, they only carry independently published books. So you're not going to find big names here, but you're going to find important names, profound names. So if you haven't been in here before, please take a few minutes to look around. And so I'm going to introduce Jeremy in just a second. And then after Jeremy will read, it's an open mic of 4 minutes. There's a sign-up sheet. There's some guidelines for that sign-up. There's some specific rules that Malvern has asked us to observe, and we appreciate your cooperating with that. And, next Wednesday night, we are doing the Balcones Fiction Prize and Poetry Prize. So Austin Community College sponsors a national prize, and those two winners are flying in, and they'll be reading here next Wednesday night. So please join us for that. You have nice augmented music to add to everything. If you could please turn off your cell phones, that would be fantastic. Did I cover everything? Let's see. I think that's it. I get really excited. So I know Jeremy because we sit on an advisory board for a writer's residency, and I just really was struck with the way he talks about writers and writing, and so it was really a pleasure to invite him and ask him here to be here tonight. So he is the writer in residence at the Katherine Anne Porter House in Kyle. His fiction and essays have appeared in Gargoyle, the Susquehanna Review, and Phati'tude, among others. And his story, The Extended Pose, won an Esoteric Award and LGBT fiction from Carve Magazine. He is currently at work on a novel, and I believe that's what you're going to share with us tonight. So please help me welcome Jeremy Garrett.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited to be here tonight. Thank you, Charlotte, for inviting me to read. Thank you, ACC and Malvern Books. It's really great to have a chance to have something in your community like the Literary Coffeehouse series, to come to hear some people share their work and share your own work as well. Really looking forward to the open mic after I read. Let's see here, speaking of sharing, I'm going to read from my novel in progress tonight. I'm a selfish writer. I usually don't share my work until it's finished. But I thought I'd break out of my comfort zone tonight, like I'm sure you all will do at the open mic. And if anyone's hoping for sunshine in my reading tonight, I'm so sorry there's none. The book opens at a monastery in Kentucky during an all-boys senior field trip, and the night is as dreary and wet as this. Alex had an inclination to praise God for anything in the dull hours since his class arrived at Gethsemane. The boys were to have free roam of the gardens, hills, and lakeside woods Mr. Stewart had invoked to spur their city imaginations, but there was no chance of going outdoors today. The rain had followed their field van from Louisville to Bardstown, and from the moment they passed through the Abbey gates, a fog of drizzle and mist obscured the grounds. Alex had felt himself a prisoner as the boys carried their luggage up the winding dormitory path. He was trapped for the weekend, he knew, as he wiped the specks of pink gravel from his shoes onto the guest house welcome mat. And an unwilling postulant he became as the boys shadowed the monks in their habitual grind from lunch to sext, noon to dinner, and vespers to whatever dumb chants a celibate says before sleep. The compline from which Alex had snuck away, feigning a headache, to find his cell phone charged atop the bed in which he dreaded to sleep. Thank God he'd brought his phone. Mr. Stewart had warned against electronics, something about communing with God and nature without the encumbrances of the outer world. But after so many silence hours, Alex needed more than the quiet of white-walled corridors and the bowed reverence of shaved heads. The glow of his phone and his unread text messages rescued him from the solitude so many sought here. Like every Friday since Alex turned 18, Jared had bombarded him. Hey, hottie, let's dance. I'll sponsor you. Hottie, sleep over at my crib. Hottie, where are you? Pre-drinks at 8, get here. Alex wouldn't be stuck at the monastery if he'd listened to his mother and taken calculus instead of poetry seminar with its mandatory field trip. Sure, the lack of math had made senior year a breeze, but if he'd sacrificed a few nights to numbers, he wouldn't be here wishing he was anywhere else, wishing he was dancing. Alex snapped a photo of the opposite side of the room. As with his side of the room, there was the same squat twin bed, a green Bible on the petite writing desk, and the portrait of a saint above the nightstand, a haloed Teresa who clutched a pink rose to her chest. He attached the photo to his text. Pray for me on the dance floor tonight. They've married me off to Jesus if you don't hear back from me. God, how he wanted to dance. Not that Alex was a good dancer, not that Alex had danced before this year, but there was something about the strobing lights and thumping bass of the club, something about those few drinks in him that made him dance well enough to attract the glance of a handsome stranger. It was Jared who had taught him how to dance, no choreography required. Get a hold on your partner, easy enough. Get a hold on him and move your hips like an hourglass. Get the beat in your hips. The world had opened to Alex in the months since his birthday, and here he was closed off again, sequestered like a kid without a car whose parents need to know exactly what he's up to every Friday night. A child expected to say his prayers and be in bed early enough to wake up in his trap again. There would be no more traps for Alex. After graduation, he would never be a kid again, never herded like a child, single file into a school van for the most boring weekend of his life. Hell, he'd never have a boring weekend again. Alex rose from the bed, set his phone on the desk, and hit play on his Eurodance mix. He shook his hips to the beat while he dug into his satchel for the one-shot bottles of whiskey he'd taken off Jared's hands in case this weekend turned sour, which it had. Sour turned sweet once he cracked the top and drained the honeyed whiskey in a single throat-searing gulp. One down, 11 bottles to go as the empty bounced off his bag and rolled under the bed to await whichever monk was suffered into janitorial duty on Monday. Alex didn't need the club to dance. The welcome burn in his stomach stoked the embers that had cooled since last week, and the music blaring from his phone, the electronic arpeggio atop the omnipresent bass, sounded as if 1,000 crystals were bursting in the air. The room was austere no more. Glittering shards of crystal penetrated every corner of the space, and his skin enlivened into goose flesh as he moved his hips like an hourglass until even the hourglass broke. He dipped to the floor and shot up, hands in the air as if it were the climax of another night at the club, a climax and a beginning, so in control of his self and surroundings that even the saints on the walls smiled with him. "Oh, no, you don't, St. Francis," he said with a spin. "You gotta buy this boy a drink if you want to dance. Teresa, get back to your crypt. The only flower I want is the Vion rose." His shirt had come untucked while he danced. The phone leapt to another song, another of his favorites, different lyrics to a similar beat which kept him writhing as one by one he undid his shirt buttons and whipped the shirt across the room. He danced with his elbow raised, one hand on the back of his neck as the other explored the curves of his chest and abs. His hand he imagined belonging to another as it crept below his waistband to massage the pubic hair he'd only recently begun to trim. The click of the bedroom door startled Alex from his revelry. He opened his eyes expecting the peeved stare of Mr. Stewart or the silent judgment of a stone-faced monk, but it was his classmate Will who stood at the door, his hand still on the knob as if he couldn't decide whether to stay or leave at the sight of Alex dancing. Alex kept his hand in his pants. He'd been around Will long enough that they knew each other more than shirtless. "Will, get over here. Dance with me." You can hear the music in the hall. Will crossed his arms, darker, Alex noticed, with each new day of spring. Mr. Stewart will throw a fit. Lock the door. He'll just think we're watching Netflix. Will, with averted eyes, crossed the room and grabbed Alex's phone off the desk. He silenced the music. I don't see how you can listen to that stuff. You missed out at Compline tonight. I've never heard anything like it. The way the monks' voices echoed off the walls, felt like even the pews were vibrating. You should go with me tomorrow. You might like it. Joel William, a teacher's pet if there ever was one, and the only boy in their class who enjoyed his every minute at Gethsemane. Joel Will, who sang praises of their meatless dinner of risotto and asparagus that had left Alex hungry enough to be tipsy from one shot of whiskey. Joel Will with his waste of potential. The boy had body beneath his pressed khakis and navy blue polo. The boy had allure with his piercing green eyes and mop of brunette hair. But he had no confidence. He'd grown a foot in high school, and still he walked with his shoulders slumped, eyes on his feet, as if he were afraid to face the future ahead of him. I'll go to Compline tomorrow, said Alex, sliding his hand to his hip. But only if you have a drink with me. There's tea and water, Will hesitated, in the kitchen. Whiskey, bitch. I don't drink. What you mean to say is you've never had a drink. Alex plucked 2 shots from his bag. Don't worry, I'll get you in bed early enough for the Good Morning Jesus service. Really, said Will, I can't. What, you signed some pledge at your Pentecostal church? Even the monks drink wine with dinner every now and then. Here, I have half a Coke left. Alex cracked open a shot and poured it into the can on his bedside table. Can't even taste the whiskey. All this convincing. It was as if they were in Alex's basement again. Then it must have taken 1,000 words to get Will's shirt off. What must have been 100 kisses before Will allowed his pants to be unzipped. Put your clothes back on, said Will, and I'll have a drink. There was a God, Alex reckoned, as he slid his arms through his sleeves and buttoned up until his chest hair was framed in an Oxford V. He opened a shot for himself and clinked the plastic against Will's can. Cheers to our date at Compline tomorrow. Will frowned with his first sip. It tastes flat. That's just the whiskey, said Alex, cross-legged on bed. Come over here. There's no use in drinking if you can't sit back and relax. The desk chair purred along the carpet as Will pulled it to the bed and sat a foot away. One leg crossed over the other to support the can in the crook of his knee. I don't see what all the fuss is about, he said after his second sip. I bet the communion wine tastes better. Be grateful you're not Catholic, said Alex. That stuff is swill. I've always wanted to try it. Not the wine, the ritual. To be individually blessed. I like how the priest wipes the rim after each person takes a drink. At my church, we just say our prayer all together and drink the grape juice at once. Alex placed his hand on Will's ankle. I can sneak you into Eucharist. Will uncrossed his legs so that Alex's hand had no place to rest. I can go to chapel. I can watch and pray. I'm not Catholic, Alex. It's a sin to take if you're not Catholic. No one cares if you're confirmed or not. Now drink your whiskey with a joyful heart lightweight, for God has already approved what you do. You would know the verses about drinking, said Will, smiling for the first time today. Joy of joys, he even took another drink. Alex had barely touched his whiskey. A sip with cheers was all he drank, and Will was at his level now as he took his last sip and set the can on the floor, empty. Wasn't so bad, was it? Did you feel anything? Nothing. Then you need another. Alex reached into his bag and tossed a shot into Will's lap. I'm out of Coke, so this one's straight. We're 18, he said, ready to counter whatever excuse made to refuse the drink. It's only a matter of time before you go to some party and you're offered a drink, 2 drinks, endless drinks. I'm not trying to get you drunk. I'm looking out for you. You've got to know your limits, learn your limits. Otherwise, you'll get drunk at that party. You'll get drunk, but you won't think you're drunk, and you'll end up murdering a handful of children in that little blue truck of yours. One last drink, said Will. You promise? Only if you make the toast. Will sat thoughtfully for a moment, his eyes on the wall above Alex's head before he raised the bottle. Cheers, he said, to our stay at Gethsemane. May we look inside ourselves this weekend as we prepare for the road ahead. God, even his toast felt like a prayer. Alex tilted back his head and swallowed the last of his whiskey in a single practiced gulp. Will, first-timer that he was, took a dainty sip and grimaced, his forehead scrunched into the bridge of his nose as the liquor hit the back of his throat. He coughed. It's not nearly as good without Coke. That's a boy. Wait and take another sip. It's like walking on hot coals. The first step is the hardest, and then it's all smooth walking from there. Will laughed and took another drink. Lies, he said, almost out of breath. If you'd walked on coals, it would have been posted to Instagram by now. Hell if that first whiskey hadn't loosened up Will. Alex scooted forward in bed. His knees jutted over the edge of the mattress, closer to the legs of his roommate, who'd lost enough of his rigidity to slump down in his chair. "Oh, I'm a firewalker," said Alex, looking straight into Will's eyes, which for the first time in months didn't blink away from him. "You stick with me, I'll teach you all the tricks." "You really think we'll see each other after graduation?" Will sat unmoving. "I don't see you as much as it is. You've got new friends. We'll make 1,000 more at college." Will drank again until only an inch of whiskey remained. "I almost didn't sign up to bunk with you this weekend, but I wanted to be with you, to talk like we used to, like we did all those nights making fun of movies in your basement, like we did before, you know." So Will was a doleful, reminiscent drunk. Alex liked it. "I don't know what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying. I'm here to pray and contemplate, but all I could think about at comp line was getting back to our room, to let you know we're still friends, that we're still friends, even if we don't see each other after next week." Alex stood from the bed, stepped around the chair, and touched his hands to Will's shoulders. He massaged his shoulders gently to find the small hard knots buried in his skin. "Been a while since you've had a good rub, huh?" Will was on the verge of tears as his nose sucked back snot. Wouldn't be the first time Alex had seen him cry. He remembered the night Will's face turned ugly as he pleaded for Alex to never touch him again. And what were his tears now? Tears, surely, made of all the guilt they hammered into him at Pentecostal church. Guilt over that which he couldn't resist, relaxed as his shoulders were in Alex's grip. "Should we call it a night?" said Alex, gently kneading. "I haven't finished my drink." Will smoothed away his tears with the palm of his hand, lifted the bottle from the floor, and drank his last inch of whiskey. "You don't have to be alone," said Alex. "Sleep in my bed tonight." "Sorry," said Will. He rested his shoulders from Alex's grip as he stood. "I have to piss. Don't feel you have to wait up for me." Alex had never felt sorry for his friend. He'd been agitated, left with blue balls more than once, but God, if his erection hadn't deflated as the door clicked shut behind Will. Poor bastard. If Will continued to play his cards lamentably straight, he'd find some girlfriend soon, some not-so-pretty Abigail, Mary, or Leah from church who'd patiently await till he found the courage to hold her hand at the movies. Let him live stymied. Alex peeled off his clothes and set them crumpled on the desk. He crawled into bed, switched off the lamp, and pulled the sheets up to his neck as he turned his back to the half-lit gloom of Will's side of the room. The monastery was quiet enough that Alex could tell it had quit raining. Tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow he'd sneak off into the fields and woods Mr. Stewart had promised them. Alex relished how the whiskey made the hours blur together, making even the dullest night bearable. Jared and his friends would be on their way to the club by now. If it had quit raining in Louisville too, he would be driving with the Jeep windows down, the beat of a cultivated pop playlist spilling into the streets as he pulled up to the club. A week from now, and Alex would be with them again, ready to dance the night away with a fire in his belly. He stirred at the sound of the bedroom door opening and closing behind Will. Alex opened his eyes to the white, scantily lit wall as his roommate's shoes, one after the other, fell to the floor with a soft thud. There was the jangle of Will's belt buckle, the rustling of his clothes as he disrobed, then darkness in the creaky bed springs. Alex didn't move. He was asleep for all that Will knew. There was the sound of bed springs again as Will tossed and turned, an unceasing squeak of bed springs as Alex knew there was hope for his friend yet. That little fuck was masturbating. And now for some difference. Here's a short section from Will's point of view. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. Will had been 20 minutes in the garden, and this was as far as he'd read in the little anthology that sat open on his lap. The world is charged, he read again and again, with the grandeur of God. But his eyes refused the next lines, the inky stanzas stamped onto the page that had yellowed for decades before Will rescued him. Will was ready. He had been ready. But there was no purpose here today. No purpose that, amid the silence, welled up within him. Inches from his feet, a two-way trail of ants marched to and from their minuscule mound, which overnight had erupted from the gravel. Even ants had a purpose, to dig, gather, and eat, to march along their ever-extending path, limitless. He envied the ants, so much like his classmates who worried over the color of their graduation sports car, or if they had dropped enough hints to convince their parents into a summer trip. Their futures were certain, to each a fresh start at some in-state college far enough away to have some independence, but not too much independence from mom and dad. Unlike them, there would be no college for Will. He would have his little lawn mowing business. He would mow and save his money, albeit the weekly envelope he set in the collection plate for some heavenly reward as elusive as the purpose God had in store for him. Will shifted on his bench. Any other Saturday and he'd be pushing his snapper. The engine's roar would drown out his thoughts, and he'd find solace and silence in the thunderous hypnotism of the mechanic whir. If only he could get his hands dirty, sweat out the thoughts that plagued him. The touch of Alex's hand still lingered on his shoulders. His tongue was swollen from last night's whiskey, and his friend's words, "You don't have to be alone," echoed in his head as he sat barred from what should have been the beauty around him. Thank you.